so many people think, oh, I'm going to become a realtor and all my friends are just going to naturally buy a house with me. It's like, that's not really going to happen. Like the running joke with real estate people is like, I quit my 9-to-5 job and now I work 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? It's in your best interest to pay this amount to me, whatever percent. I know. It's in your best interest. Otherwise,
that comes out.
Yeah. No, might come out, or Big Vito. You know what I mean? He'll be waiting for you in the parking lot. So I'm just saying, 5%. Now, I mean, some people will be like, oh, well, I don't really want to sign anything. I'm like, well, I really don't want to show you this house then. I guess, that's how it's going to work. So I have enough trouble sleeping. I want to sleep at night, knowing I kind of did the right thing. I'm like, so you don't want to sign it? No problem. Just your other agent's a sleazeball and he's breaking the law. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? But, for the most part, again, it's how you present it. Listen, it's still okay, right? It's okay to be you, all right?
This is how I feel inside, baby, okay? Maybe I'm a man on the outside, but on the inside, I feel like a 95-and-a-half-year-old mama,
You got to put the glasses back.
Introduce yourself.
Nona Josepina, baby. I'm the number one realtor of all of the times.
Welcome to Mike's split personality.
Yeah, I'm a Gemini, so a little bit of crazy, a little bit of another crazy,
Back at it again. So today, we have someone special on again. We keep having these special guests.
Special people here.
Yeah. Some would say a blast from the past.
Absolutely.
He's a man of many talents. Actor, banking, real estate, most recently. Mr. Mike Blinder.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Pleasure is all yours. I'm sure.
It's definitely a pleasure to have you, brother.
Definitely. It's been a long time, and I'm super excited about this.
So today, you are most recently in real estate.
Yes.
But just to give you like a little bit of a background, Brooklyn boys over here.
Right.
Grew up on Gravesend area.
The Gravesend, right.
Yeah. And that's where we all met.
Yep.
And then we kind of went our separate ways a little bit later.
Right.
So you used to be in banking, right?
Yes. That was kind of my first go-to, like right out of college. It's just started. I'm like, you know how the mothers are. They're like,
you got to be
you gotta get a job. You gotta get a good job. Don't be a lazy boy.
And I'm like, all right, like, what do I got to do? And, banking was back in the day kind of like the thing. I knew a lot of bankers and, it just started like, hey, you know what? Let me explore this. And did it for 15 years. I was practically everything. The janitor, the branch manager.
What did you start with?
Everything.
You started like as a teller or did you?
Never as a teller, but I was kind of like a greeter where people would just come in and I'd be like, hi, welcome to so-and-so bank. And so, started out as that and just, kept on moving up. I was like private clients with the people. And, like I said, at the end, I was kind of like a branch manager where, it was good for a while until like, the 80-year-old grandma comes in and starts like,
give me back my $35,
Okay.
So I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe it's time for a change.
And you changed directly into real estate or?
Well, I mean, we moved out to Jersey
as
soon as we had our daughter.
So let's go back to, how did you get to Jersey?
So, I mean...
Brooklyn, you skipped Staten Island.
Right.
It's a natural progression to go to Staten Island before you go to Jersey.
It is. And so many people do it.
Exactly.
And it's fine because it almost kind of like gets you ready for like the Jersey life.
Yeah.
Right?
You go from the city to a little bit of a suburb and then the suburb.
Right, actually. So, we had to deal with my wife. We're like, all right, listen, we're living in Brooklyn. We were like living right across from like Coney Island Hospital, right in the heart of Brooklyn. And we're like, when we finally have a child... let's make the move. I have younger in-laws that help. So it was just only like kind of a natural progression to like make that little skip and just go straight to Jersey. We had our baby.
I'm sorry, why Jersey? I mean, some people go to Long Island.
Well, again, just for the help, you know what I mean? It was
because the parents,
right.
Your wife is from Jersey.
Yeah, we were going to be first-time parents, and we're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, I remember even like coming out of the hospital, they gave us the baby. I'm like, well, what do we do next? We're like, she's crying. What do we do? We're like panic. So we kind of knew, hey, listen, the right progression is to go to Jersey. My parents, God willing, they're still alive. Everything's great. But, they're a little bit on the older side. So we kind of really needed the help. So we're like, all right, let's just go straight to Jersey.
Your parents are in Jersey too now?
No, they're still in Brooklyn. Yeah,
they're holding down the fort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we got to have eyes and ears everywhere.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, let's just go to Jersey. We head out to Jersey. We were looking around. We wanted to be, again, in close proximity to my in-laws where I could actually get the help. And we settled on Old Bridge, a great town. But we're like so close to like almost everything else that's around there.
Yeah.
And that's it. That was like kind of like the move right then.
Still a Rangers fan though?
Yeah, bro.
Okay,
Forget
okay.
about
Making
that.
sure.
You know, and my daughter's a big Ranger fan too. You know, I mean, even though she's like, well, we live in New Jersey, can we love the Devils? I'm like, you know, when the Rangers aren't playing, we could kind of like the Devils, I guess. But yes, definitely a Ranger fan. Absolutely.
Fair enough.
You're in Jersey, new family.
Yep.
All settled in.
Yep.
And that's when you're like, I'm going to do real estate. Well, how did that come about?
Right. I mean, it was actually like in the middle of like pandemic. The banking world was like going crazy, and I was just kind of like, oh, you know, this is probably the right time to like look into something new. And all my friends were, you know, not friends, you know, we had a few acquaintances that were doing real estate. They were doing really well. They were like, you know, pretty successful, I would say. And everybody's like, why don't you
Like
try that?
Sirhan, all those friends, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. All of them. Right. Like those. So I was like, all right, you know what? You know, people are like, listen, if you could sell a checking account, you could sell a house. I'm like, all right, a little bit different. The price point is a little different there, but I get the point. It's a people business. And I'm like, I've always been great
You're a
with
people person.
Right. I'm a people, you know, sometimes, you know, and I'm a Gemini too. So sometimes I can be a little, you know, crazy, but yes. And for the most part, I love people. So I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and try it out. You know, I met with like a great team member. I'm, you know, good realtor in the community. He kind of tried to take me underneath his wing, you know, introduced me to the world of real estate, and it kind of like started spreading from there.
So you had to, there's a process, you have to take the exam, right?
Yeah.
Someone had to sponsor you. Like real estate is a little different in Jersey than from New York, I imagine, right? So the process is different and everything.
Right. Like, again, you got to take the test. There's like 2 tests you got to take. When you're done with that, you go ahead. Somebody needs to sponsor you, right? You have to be with a brokerage. And then from there, you kind of just start to, you know, I mean, the test is like laws that I'll never probably have to ever use again. You just pass the test, and then, you know, the laws and the things that you really need is when you're actually starting to like do real estate.
Right.
And I mean, even to this day, like 5 years later, I'm still learning. So it's always a natural, like.
And that's why as a young realtor agent, it's good to have a broker who's very nurturing, right?
Right.
It's like some of the brokerages, they're like, just
Right.
go, no support.
Yeah.
You're just there, right?
They're like, good job. You passed the test.
Yeah.
You know, let me know when you get that commission check so I could get like 50% of it, you know?
Right.
But yeah, it's always good to have a good broker to kind of like lead you. I mean, even right now, the brokerage that I'm in right now, they do just a copious amount of like trainings and, you know, leadership is always, you know, supporting you. So that's really important when you're kind of looking for a brokerage as well.
Right.
Just saying, I took the test 4 times.
In New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I passed it 4 times.
Okay.
And I never took the next step.
Jesus, oh my God.
Just life gets in the way, and you know,
You sure it
different
wasn't a
profession.
pregnancy test?
No,
right?
no.
I mean,
That only happened twice.
okay.
I'm just asking.
But yeah, I was always into it as well. I always wanted to do it, but just, you know, life got in the way. I had a main profession that was paying the bills, and this was kind of thing on the side. A lot of people start this thing on the side.
Absolutely. I mean, so many realtors kind of just start on the side as a little bit of a side hustle, but then they, you know, they get a good book of business, they get enough clients, and they're like, hey, I could kind of progress in this and start to scale.
But those first months are tough, right?
And you're a young dad, right? You mentioned.
Yeah.
At this
So
point,
how was
there's a lot
that?
of pressure.
Keep on saying I'm young, but bro, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to give you a kiss on the lips later. I mean, I'm not that young, but like, I mean, yes, I'm a young dad. I have a beautiful 6-year-old Sophia. And, you know, sometimes you just gotta, you know, when you,
And at that point, she's just born, right?
right.
So
Right. And
So
you know,
she's born, you got no job, you're in real estate. I mean, but even if you sell a house, that's like a 3-month at least until
Yes.
you get your first check.
right. Because by the time they
So
go to
wifey was
and agents at the
Wifey
beginning.
was carrying the costs of a lot of things, you know. Luckily, we had a few good, you know, shekels in the savings. But yeah, it's very difficult. It's, you know, you kind of have to have an action plan and not just like, you know, just you'd be like, hey, whatever, I'm just gonna throw shit out the wall. Or so many people think, oh, I'm gonna become a realtor, and all my
Right.
friends are just gonna naturally buy a house with
Yeah.
me. It's like, you know, that's not
Yeah.
really gonna happen. So, you know, it does take a little bit of time for you to learn the business and start to get your own success.
How did you deal with maybe initially? I know for a lot of agents, once again, you don't get those deals right away. You're new. not to feel discouraged and keep continuing, because I think a lot of new agents drop out. There's a high rate of that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, it's who you kind of work with that'll tell you, hey, you're doing a great job. Just keep it going. Give you that confidence, just, that little push that you might need. And then it's really all about yourself also. Everybody always says it, like the running joke with real estate people is like, I quit my 9-to-5 job and now I work 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? So it's like, kind of like, if you don't have a passion for it, if you don't really love it,
right,
of course, you're just going to be like, all right, I'll do this a little bit later. Let me just, relax and watch Netflix for like 8 hours and then I'll do some real estate. But some people are like, I just love it. I want to grind it out and go for everything. So I'm like the latter, hopefully.
So when was that sale? Like, you got into it, you passed your test,
right?
You found a broker.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it actually take?
It actually took like almost how you said 3 to 4 months. I mean, I kind of hit the ground running. Really, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I still like remember my first showing. It was like a friend of a friend. They're like, all right, he wants a beach house. And this is like dead of winter. And I'm like over there, like with a lockbox trying to get it open, scared as like, FUZK, like, oh my God, what am I doing with myself? But then I was like, all right, listen, just act natural. You're not going to make every sale. And even like the realtors say that they have this high success rate. It's not really like that, especially all these people, like you said, like, the Sir Hans and all those, they filmed this and it's like unbelievable. They're picking up the phone and they're like, yeah, $400,000 off the price tag. Okay, deal. We're good. They hang up.
It never works like that.
Yeah, it never works like that.
They pick the best parts.
Yeah,
kind of like this show.
Right, exactly. It's all the best part here, bro.
Exactly. But also there's a lot of that from what I understand, you go to school, you learn everything they teach you. And, they teach you the right way. And then there's the way that works.
Right.
Right. I'm not saying that it's wrong necessarily, but like what I saw is I looked for a couple of houses in Jersey before we bought the place in Staten Island.
Sure.
And everybody would be like, because it's a different process and maybe it is, and you can talk about that. But basically every single house I would walk into, it'd be like, hey, you need to sign this contract with me that I'm the only person that's going to show you. And I'm like, what? Like,
right.
what
right.
contract? So I know that they have that around here too. It's like, it's not really a contract, but it's kind of like that you're promising that you're going to
right.
be dealing with you rather than 100 different people.
Right.
I wasn't that guy. I didn't care. I was like, I see a house on Realty. I want to see that house. I don't care who shows it to me.
Right.
So you're dealing with that as well, right?
Yeah.
When you're showing a bunch of houses to people.
Of course.
And then that person goes and buys it with someone else.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
Does that thing help?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much heartbreak with that as well.
I like how you said that, heartbreak.
But at the same time, I mean, they actually enacted this rule in August of 2024, where before anybody could take you, you got to sign a buyer's agency agreement.
Right.
Now they're non-exclusive.
So same thing in New Jersey, right? Because they did it in New York.
Yes.
And then reciprocal.
But they're non-exclusive. And if you explain it the right way and you just let them know, I'm like, hey, listen, this is just my fiduciary responsibilities for you guys. And this is what I'm going to do for you. And then at the same time, it's non-exclusive. It says we're just going to see this house together. If you like it, you like me, we could go to exclusive, right? It's just like dating. You know what I mean? When we used to go on J-Date back in the day.
I'd like to see those contracts.
Yeah. We used to go to J-Date back in the day, and I'd be like, listen.
You missed out on all of that.
You missed out.
I got married early.
Oh, buddy.
I think women is
women. Women. Oh, my God. Oh, God, those days.
Were you even on it?
Yeah,
okay.
There was women beef, bro.
Okay.
Was it? Back
a little
in the day,
bit,
right?
a little bit.
Here and there. So, I mean, as long as you explain things the right way and you're genuine about it and you let them know, listen, this is also how, I get paid. And, I explained to them, I'm like, I'm protecting myself. I'm protecting you as well. So they kind of appreciate that. I mean, some people will be like, oh, well, I don't really want to sign anything. I'm like, well, I really don't want to show you this house then. I guess, that's how it's going to work.
So how does that work? Is it just per house?
I mean, you could do it per house. You could do it per county. You could just leave it blank and they'll sign it and say,
you fill in the country.
No, yeah. All of the USA.
Hey, by the way, you just bought a house. Congratulations.
Yeah, right. Sorry, But no, in general, I mean, we talk about it and whatever the person's comfortable with, I always tell them like, listen, let's just see this one house. You like me, you like my service, you see value in what I could provide. Absolutely, we could change it to an exclusive buyer's agent agreement. But, I never put any pressure because there's too many people out there to,
I think the main problem with that, not a problem, but how people, at least how I was looking at it is I was always worried that if I'm like exclusive with you, you would be showing me only the houses that your agency has.
Right.
You know, and because you're going to get full commission versus half commission if you're selling somebody else's houses.
Right.
So you're I guess people are worried that you're driving it towards that.
Yeah. And you know what? I explain to people, I'm like, listen, you know, if the sellers said they're going to, you know, cover the cost, then the seller's covering the cost. And I explain that to them. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather be upfront and honest with somebody than like, you know, we're seeing houses 2 months later and we're ready to put in that offer and something goes awry. And then they're like, well, you know, you didn't tell me this, you didn't tell me that. And guys, I have enough trouble sleeping. I want to sleep at night, you know, knowing I kind of did the right thing. And like I said, so you don't want to sign it, no problem. You know, just your other agent's a sleazeball and he's breaking the law. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? But, you know, for the most part, again, it's how you present it.
So are you like full Jersey or specific areas that you are your
expertise that you focus on?
Right. So, I mean, being that I'm like right on the cusp of like Monmouth County, Middlesex County, I know those areas like the back of my hand. So those are my local realtor, which is anyway, it's a wide amount, but I show everywhere, you know. And then these days you don't really even need a local realtor. I mean, what's a local realtor? Like, what is he going to tell you? You know, okay, oh, this restaurant is good down the block. You know, you don't really need to know that. You know what I mean? You have Yelp, right? You got like Google. You could see what's around there. You could join Facebook community pages. So like, you really don't need to know. And for the most part, people already know where they kind of want to be. I'm just over there to kind of like provide support. And do the negotiation for them as well.
So when you started out, you didn't feel like you needed to familiarize yourself with the area before you could advise knowledge, or is that part of it? Or
no, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know what? I mean, I go to new areas all the time.
Right.
And then I'm like, wow, this area is like pretty cool. And then I'll do a little bit of research because somebody might not be looking over there and be like, hey, listen, by the way, I was just like, you know, in Vernon, New Jersey. It's awesome over there. You said you like skiing, you know, ski resorts, this, that.
Vernon is not like north, really.
It's kind of north. Yeah. It's like a good hour and a half. And I've shown from there and I'm like, listen, sometimes you got to go where you got to go, you know?
And in Jersey, it's a lot of mileage. Like New York, you could hop on a train, whatnot. Everything's
right. God bless my accountant, you know? You got to have a good accountant, you know? Yeah. Nobody said that. Nobody heard that. Okay. But no, I mean, listen, yeah, sometimes you just got to, but listen, I'm also quick where, you know, if somebody's taking me out way too far, too many times, you know, you kind of start gauging them. Like, are you really serious? Right. Or, you know, you're not putting in any offers, nothing that we saw interests you at all, or, you know, like, you know, what's going on. So you really want to see, you know, what their actually, you know, thought process is. So I always try to have like some sort of conversation, whether we see a house, it's not just like, oh, this is the kitchen, this is that. I really try to see like, what are they really looking for? You know, the fine details of everything.
When you start showing properties to someone who comes in, hey, I want to buy a house, anything that you want to see first, like a pre-approval letter that they're qualified for a mortgage or not, kind of also know that they're serious? Is that part of the
right? Yeah. So I
process?
mean, that is one of like, I mean, almost every realtor kind of wants that. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes people are like, well, don't worry, I'm good for it, I'll get it.
Right.
And again, I don't mind showing a house the first time, you know, but if they like it, I kind of explain to them, this is why we need it, because it's still a competitive market. I mean, you know, we see it on Saturday, it might be gone on Friday, I mean, on Monday. And, you know, it's going to take a day or two to get your pre-approval and you're going to miss out on it. So I kind of like explain that to them that, hey, it's still a fast market. Good houses sell very quick. I mean, that's kind of almost the strategy for most listing agents. They don't want to burden their seller. So they're like, listen, I'm just going to put my house on for sale like on Friday, do a few private showings. I'll do an open house or two. And I'll be sure to have like 4 or 5 different contracts in hand. So I explain that to people. I'm like, are we going to be ready? Is your lender, you know, going to be able to get you that pre-approval? And usually good lenders, they don't just do like the basic pre-approval. They'll like go ahead and they'll actually give you like, you know, almost everything. Like, so this way you're ready to go. And it shows you're even more of a serious buyer.
Right. And if someone is new, like let's say come to you and like, I want to move to Jersey, but I don't have a pre-approval. I'm fairly new in this process. Right. I assume you have someone that you would recommend.
I have a bunch, yeah.
And that's what also the other asset of having a realtor represent you is because they have resources they can direct you to, right? And I think the way the rule is, they'll direct you to several, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't have like a dedicated team because, again, that seems a little bit fishy. Like, why do you use this person all the time? Right. But at the same time, you know, with the 5 years that I've been doing this, I've met like so many good attorneys, real estate attorneys, so many good like lenders. And, I'm like, all right, this one was a good deal with them, or they had a great program. I'm going to put them in my Rolodex. And I'll go ahead and hey, I need a pre-approval. No problem. Reach out or, do your research on 1, 2, 3, and they're all great.
Right.
And that's it. And then, they'll do a little research. And they're like, oh, who do you recommend? And I'm like this 1, 2, 3. I'm like, if you want, start calling from the top, you know what I mean? And figure it out who you jive with as well.
If I remember correctly, that's like the law, right? You're not allowed to.
You're not allowed to give just one.
Just one, right?
Right.
That's what I remember from the school.
Yeah.
That's good, man. Maybe take the next step.
Yeah, man. It's time, bro.
I got to move to Jersey first.
You can just start Staten Island.
Yeah, there you go. Listen.
Huge market. How's the Jersey market?
It's still crazy, man.
Yeah.
I would think with rates that started like kind of like dripping up and up and up and up, it would slow down a little bit. But no, it just kind of weeds out like some of the people who are like really weren't ready or weren't too serious. But I mean, it's still crazy competitive.
We were just spoiled with the rates during the pandemic.
Right.
I mean, from what I heard in the 90s, the rates were like 18% or something like
exactly. And that's kind of the story that I tell people also. I'm like, I mean, listen, when ask your parents when they bought their house, what did they pay for? I mean, true, the house was like maybe, like 50 bucks, 50 bucks and like a bag of peanuts, right? And that's it. You're like, oh, sold, Manhattan Beach. I'm like, what? That's it. So it was a little bit different, but at the same time, yeah, the rates were a little bit crazy.
Because the hype started obviously during the pandemic, right? With the rates going down, with people wanting to get out into bigger places.
Get out of the city.
Right? And from what I recall, it's just like a bidding war. And
it was wild.
Is it still similar? Or?
It's still similar. I mean, a lot of companies went to work from home, right? And that was the thing that kind of changed everything, because they're like, why do I have to now be in Brooklyn, in New York, whatever, Staten Island, And like you said, I want a bigger place. The rates were crazy cheap. So people were like, all right, what's the next progression? Jersey's like up and coming, or I know so many people already moved to Jersey. Yeah. And, that would be like the next step for them. So, but it's still crazy competitive.
How about the inventory? Is it?
So the inventory is still very low.
Okay.
Again, it has to do a lot with the rates, right? Like I purchased my house and I was like paying like a 3.5% rate. I'm like, why the hell am I going to sell now and buy a more expensive house and pay like 7%? Like, I'm like what?
So that's the kind of like the where I'm at right now.
Right.
Because when I purchased, we had just our daughter, and there was 3 of us. We got a 2-bedroom duplex condo. And at 475, and 4.75%, I mean, 4.75%. And now I'm like, okay, my son was born. We need an extra room. So looking at the budgets and the crazy prices, and if you want a real house, I don't see anything less than 700 or whatever in Jersey. Yeah. So I'm looking at it, and even if I go into a similar place but with a 3rd room, it's going to cost me almost double. Because of the rates, because of the, so we're probably going to hunker down for now here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But until maybe the rates come down or maybe they start building more.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, sellers are really selling out of necessity, right? Either, their family's getting too big and they're like, I mean, whatever, we just can't live like this
empty
anymore.
Nesters, a lot of
empty nesters. Right? Some people still want to move to Florida. Some people North Carolina. Again, work from homers. They're like, I'm done with Jersey. Let me move over here, over there. And then also, people, divorce happens, stuff like that. I got to sell the house. So, there's so many multitude of reasons. But right now, sellers are really selling. Not just because I'm like, I want a little bit of an upgrade, because you're right. The upgrade comes with an upgrade in price.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But also I heard that boomers are not really selling.
Right.
They're sitting on that money.
It's a cash cow, dude. I mean, I'm sometimes so disgusted. Like I'll see and they're like, no, I want more. And I'm like, my guy, you got the house for like $300,000 and you were listing it for like 1.2. Right. Yeah. And I want 1.4. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. I'm like, I mean, whatever. I shouldn't complain. The commission goes higher. Right? But at the same time, I'm like, things got to praise also, right? And so, I try to.
I mean, it's double that. I have someone I know that recently purchased, and I was curious about the property. I looked at the history. I think their cost was they bought it for $780 or something like that. In 2000, I think 14 or 15, the house was sold for $400,000.
Wow,
that's like a lot of money. Like it's doubled.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. I mean. it's almost like, I mean, listen, Bitcoin, right? I'm not into all that, you know, I'm like, it's like way over my head, but you know, sometimes I see people and I'll get clients and I'm like, you know, where are your source of funds? And they're like, oh, from crypto. I'm like, what?
What's crypto?
I'm like,
Is that real?
Yeah, like,
I'm not going to show this guy the house. I know what this is.
yeah, it's like, you know, there's like a joke, like Grok would be like, even me, no, that's no real money. You know what I mean? Like, what is that? So, but real estate is still one of the, you know, great investments where you could find maybe a good deal and it's going to just continue to grow.
So when somebody looks for a house, are there areas that you prefer?
Again, really no preference because, I mean, they got to live there, right? They got to be comfortable. That's my number one thing. I'm like, are you comfortable here? You know, why? You know, why? I always try to get for the why. Work, family, like, you know, what's the why? If not, I could always help, you know, say, hey, you know, have you looked into here? Have you looked into there? But, you know, of course, I prefer, you know, something in Monmouth, Middlesex that I know,
Right.
you know, the neighborhoods that I could add a little bit more value, you know, the schools and everything like that. So, of course, I prefer those. But, you know, again, I really have no preference.
Do you see anything particularly trending right now?
Trending, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I mean, townhouses are like exploding everywhere still, which is crazy. I mean, there's like a community in Marlboro, New Jersey selling like $800,000, $900,000 townhomes. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, but then I think to like, you know, I mean,
they're
from
connected, right? Townhouses.
Right. And I mean, we come from Brooklyn and you guys know like Brighton,
Absolutely.
Brighton Beach, where it's like, you know what I mean? Like Oceana, you're like across the street from like Pieces, like, you know, like Zolotoy Kluchik.
Yeah.
And people are like buying like $1.5 million, like, you know, homes.
Condos, right?
Condos. Apartments. That have like paper thin walls. Right?
Yes.
The thing, like for me, that I see is that in Staten Island, I'm in a townhome. If I would make a move to Jersey, I want a house.
Sure.
Like, I don't know do many people move from townhouse to townhouse?
Yeah, a lot do. Yeah, just again for the neighborhoods, you know, maybe
Maintenance.
Maintenance.
People don't want to do their own lawns and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I don't know your community, but like maybe it doesn't have a pool, and you're like, you know, I've always wanted to live somewhere where I have pool access or a gym. You know, so there's always like almost every single townhome community has different features. So that's like that plays a big part as well.
And they're always connected, right? That's the general.
Yeah, for generally they're always connected. I mean, you get an end unit, so like, you know, at least you get one side of like kind of privacy. But yeah, for the most part, they're pretty well built, where you're not going to really know what's going on with your neighbors.
Are there a lot of new developments now?
Dude, a lot.
A lot, right?
A lot. I mean, like where I live, like I drive by it every day. Like there was just like a like swamp, you would think, and out of nowhere, like next week there's construction going on, and like
they drain it, I guess.
Right, and then before you know it, like there's like walls, and I'm like, my God, like you know what I mean? Like, if only they did this to the BQE, you know, things would like speed up a little bit. But I'm telling you, I'm like, I just don't understand these developers. But I mean, God bless them. Listen,
why don't you understand? Do you feel like it's not a good investment?
No, I mean, they have to follow certain things also. Right. But I mean, no, I mean, listen, if you could develop a great, you know, little neighborhood,
right?
I mean, it's an investment. Any investment's a good investment.
Right.
So in regards to real estate and banking, being that I know you for a long time, and seeing what a character you are.
Yes.
I mean, I thought you were going to go into acting.
Right.
If anything. And you were in a movie, right? I mean, you played a bartender. I remember at some show or something.
Yeah, it was an HBO show where, you know, they filmed at my father's restaurant and they're like, they needed an extra. And I was like, I'll do it. Why not? You know what I mean? Maybe this will be my big break. I mean, you know, it was for the Brighton Beach community, but otherwise than that.
I saw it.
What movie was it?
Thank you. It was Bored to Death. It was a series with Zach Galifianakis,
and he gave that he gave the brow. You like you gave it like I remember that.
Yeah, like
the famous brow.
Yeah, I didn't have a line in it, but they were like the guy's like, you know, I need a white wine, so I poured him vodka and I gave him, and just kind of like walked away. But you know, I'm like, well, that's not bad. But I'm like, you know, what am I gonna do with this? But you know. Playing around with
Talking about that, is your dad still in the business?
No, he retired. Yeah, he retired. I mean, that's a crazy business. A restaurant owner, yeah.
I can imagine.
I mean,
he's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, he did it for a long time. He went through a lot of different restaurants. And it's with that you're like barely sleeping. It takes a physical toll on you. So he's doing good. He's in retirement, so let him live a little.
I mean, Odessa, which was the restaurant that your father owned, that was like the cornerstone of the community, like the immigrant group that came in the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yes.
A lot of them came from Odessa, and a lot of things happened there.
It produced some
interesting people.
stars in the business too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was a very different South Brooklyn back then. Do you have any memories? Anything you want to share?
I mean, we were like the ones responsible for like Taylor Dane, if you know her. So tell it to my heart.
Oh yeah, yeah. Go, okay, right? That was good.
Her. I mean, thank you. I sing a little. We got local celebrities like Douglas Jennar, and there's like so many others. But
and they performed at the restaurant.
They were performing at the restaurant. That's where they kind of got their start. And, my dad was like, he had the long flowing ponytail. He was, we had like Irina Alyagrova, all of these stars coming. So I was like, wow, my dad is like, well respected. I'm like, I'm like, I'm like, I kind of want to be that way also. I'm like, but I don't want to do the restaurant thing.
Right.
But I'm like, I kind of get his passion for people and like being around people from him,
So I assume there were like all these people came to your house and you had all these experiences or in conversations.
Right. I mean, they usually hid me in the basement. So, like, like companies coming over, like, okay, I go to the cage. So it really, but I got to see a lot. Yeah, I did get to see a lot.
So as you were saying, Mike has this artistic ability that he didn't fully explore perhaps in like the banking career or whatnot, but now you're incorporating that into your real estate business, right?
Yes. I mean,
and yeah, if you could talk about that, and I guess it's actually getting traction, right?
Yeah, it's just starting, but yes. I mean,
what character? What are you talking about?
This character.
Oh,
introduce yourself.
Nona Giuseppina, baby. I am the number one realtor of all of the times.
Welcome to Mike's split personality.
Yeah, I'm a Gemini, so a little bit of crazy, a little bit of another crazy,
How did that come about?
So it came. Oh, maybe maybe I'll at this point. You know what? Let's keep rolling with it. So actually, it's the 100th day of school. All the kids have that, right? I guess around these parts also they go to school for 100 days at least. No,
I don't know.
All right, it's a
he doesn't know where his kids go.
I haven't been in school for a while.
Well, in Jersey, it's kind of like a big thing where kids are like they celebrate the 100th day of school, and they want the kids to dress up as like old people, seasoned people.
I think we had that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Like seasoned people, as I like to call them. And we bought a few things for my daughter, a wig, these glasses. And she was like, I'm just going to wear the glasses. I'm like, all right, like wear the glasses. I kind of threw on the wig. I'm like, you want me to take you to the bus stop, like this? And she's like, yeah, it'll be funny. I'm like, great, let's go. Let's take a look. We go out there. I start, messing around with all the kids. I'm like,
oh, come here, my baby. I want to, look at those cheeks. I love those cheeks. Oh, my God, you like a little meatball,
And the parents didn't freak out.
No, I mean, they call the cops. I mean, that's whatever, that's whatever. But no, they had a great chuckle also. And that's it. I kind of was like, all right, that's it. I put it in the back burner. I really wasn't really thinking about it.
What year was this?
Like 2 weeks ago. No, literally, bro. I mean, it was like about a month and a half.
I was just saying, if it was going to be under a different administration, it would be completely fine.
Yeah. Listen, it's still okay, right? It's okay to be you, all right?
This is how I feel inside, baby, okay? Maybe I'm a man on the outside, but on the inside, I feel like a 95-and-a-half-year-old mama, Pretty hot.
You got to put the glasses back.
You're right. What am I looking at? Okay, I see. I talk over here. Okay.
So, that was kind of like my inspiration where I was like, all right, and then one day I was just racking my brain. And guys, this is like literally like a month ago where I'm just like, racking my brain and I'm like, all right, they're teaching us social media, you got to be big, social media. And, I follow all these realtors and they all do the same thing. And like, maybe 5% are funny, because they could do something different and that's like original. And like the other 95 are like, all right, hey, look at this home. Oh, wow. Oh, I'm in the kitchen now. Woohoo. You know what I mean? Now I'm here. Ha ha. And I'm like, oh, if I have to watch one more of these, I'm going to like, so Jeffrey Epstein myself or something, at this point. But I'm like, all right, you know what? I got to try something different. People say I'm funny. Hopefully I am funny. Hopefully it comes across funny. What can I do? And then, just this clicked. And I'm like, I just one day I just like kind of hit the record button. And I was like, all right, did a whole like one off, just like no script, no nothing. Say what you want to say and post it. I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe a few people will be like, ha ha ha, this is, cute. But it started like kind of taking off. And they're like, oh, you got to do this all the time.
Who said that? Your brokerage was like, okay, this is a good idea?
No, my mother said it. Sister was like, okay with it, No, I mean, listen, my dog was like, So
people say everybody loves it. It's great.
all my personality. This is the best personality of all time. This guy, okay.
I think
maybe your personalities, but this guy, he's a winner.
I think if we just post, if we post like a short that doesn't explain what he is, and he's in that wig and glasses, just talking with your normal voice, and you're like, I was thinking about.
It's gonna be huge, baby. It's gonna be huge, okay. But thank God, again, I have a great brokerage. They're like, listen, they
didn't suspend me.
Yeah, they haven't suspended me as of yet.
It's like whatever sells the house.
I think I'm still with them. No, but exactly. They're promoting, hey, be you, be original, because if you go viral, you're taking the brokerage with you. So, I kind of just introduced this character as a, I don't even know why I named her Nona Giuseppina. Should have been Nona Goosepina, you know what I mean? People know me as the Goose also.
Relevant,
yeah. But I was like, all right, that ship has sailed. I'm Giuseppina now. We're good to go. And, I've just been kind of like, messing around with like a few green screens on Instagram, and people are just giving me like rave reviews about it. And they're like, dude, you got to keep going with this,
Is it just Insta, or you also have TikTok?
Yeah. I mess around on the TikTok.
I do it at the TikTok.
See, I like it. I like it when he's in character, because you've been explaining it to us. This is great, but I want to see the...
the TikTok, 95 and a half year old. I got to press the button. I got to do the... okay.
I have a question for you. In every single video, right, you're talking, you're explaining, and then you look at someone. Who's that someone in that?
It's a Franco. He's my nephew. Okay, he my producer.
He showed you how to use TikTok?
Yeah, because I don't know nothing, baby. Okay, so I gotta say, Franco. He's still over. Franco, I'll be done in a few minutes. I'm almost done. Get the car ready. Okay, bye, baby. But Franco, he's always by my side, so I gotta make sure I give him the proper credit.
I mean, if it works, it works.
Does it work?
Well,
I don't know. This is like literally 2 weeks in, so it's like kind of working. But I'm like, you know what? Listen, everybody, any of these like big viral videos that you watch, or viral, creators and stuff like that. It takes a little while, right? They don't hit like on their first one, because whenever they get that real viral moment, I always kind of like, you go onto their page and you start scrolling. And then you kind of see where they kind of started from. And I'm like, oh, wow, this guy used to just do like videos on his iPhone and like not even know what he was doing. And now like, he's got this whole production and everything like that. So I'm like, you know what? Here's the most important point. The most important point is I'm having fun with it. I get to like
be you, basically.
Right. Well,
kind of, baby.
And as an actor, I don't necessarily
not as a 95 and a half year old woman, but baby, yes.
So exactly. I get to be me, like a little actor, have a little fun. And, even if I'm making just like one or two people laugh, it's like, one or two people that, who knows, might eventually buy a home or something with me,
Right. So for people who are a little more uptight or whatnot, do you feel like it distracts, or if somebody wants like some serious advice and then like you're in this character?
Right.
Did you ever consider that, or do you think it has any effect? Like, I don't care, I'm just gonna be me. And I'm like,
look, at the end of the day, I'm still very serious. I'm super professional.
Right.
When I'm negotiating for people, it's not like I go into character and it's like,
no, baby, I need $100,000 off. Did you see a house? It's a piece of shit.
You know what I mean?
I mean, until it works. Right?
Yeah, it still might work. You know what I mean? It still might work. I don't know. But at the same time, like, again, I'm a Gemini, so I could be a little bit funny and crazy, and I have my serious side. And again, I'm actually a good person that like vibes with people, and I'll see what their vibe is, Right. And if I throw in a joke and they're not laughing, I'm like, all right, we're just gonna keep this like at a level 3, But then if I throw in a joke and somebody laughs, I'm like, all right, let me see, and then I go levels, and
you gotta feel it.
Yeah, you gotta feel a personality, right.
But it's a valid concern,
right? I'm just thinking
it is. It
could backfire, but maybe not.
Which takes a lot of courage,
right?
Also switching careers to something that doesn't have a salary when you just had a baby, that also takes courage.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a courageous woman.
You're courageous.
Thank you, babies. Thank you. You know what I mean? Even when I was on the boat from Italia to New York, I was courageous then too. Yeah, it was the Titanic. You know this boat?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
You were on it.
Not a good trip. I rated a 2.
Got air on the door.
Got out right in time, baby.
Why couldn't Jack be on the door with
Yeah,
you?
I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean? More than enough room. You know, he needed a 3-bedroom house, I guess.
So you mentioned there are different character types for realtors, right? Everyone has this persona, and I think they fall into certain categories, right?
Sure.
And that's how they portray themselves on social media as well, right? There's this babe that goes around and shows the apartment, right?
Right.
This guy who
Buttoned up suit,
buttoned up
you know what I mean?
suit that
From the
you know,
Men's
he-
Warehouse, although he says it's Gucci. Yes,
right.
yes.
How do you feel about that? Like, can you like enact or kind of run through some stereotypes that you find like hilarious?
I mean, that, you know, like the hot female realtor, you know, that was like, you know, the old portrait, you know, especially like all these shows Selling Sunset, this and that,
Right.
you know, and it's like, you know, like, I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, you're going to be like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to give you $1 million for this house just because you're hot. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, they can't negotiate, you know, or maybe they could. I mean, God bless them, right? But at the same time, that's kind of like a stereotype. And then it's like, oh, you got to wear a suit. You got to wear a suit. I'm like, and it's all because of like, again, what they saw on TV.
Right.
$1 million listing, this one, that one. You know, all these guys are buttoned up, suits.
and they want to replicate that because they're kind of being sold a dream that they want to follow, right?
Right. They think like, listen, I'm going to dress like this. I'm going to get this house. And I mean, listen, 9 times out of 10, you're going to dress like that. You're still going to sell a $200,000 house. You know what I mean? So it's you know, it's a give and take type of situation.
I think from my experience, what really adds value is where your realtor is knowledgeable.
Right.
And I've known some people that it's not about like the perception, the image is like they know real estate and
Right.
they'll advise you properly and better than anyone else. They know how to negotiate. And I think that's the key, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we always ask for like reviews, for instance, like
Right.
on, you know, some of these major websites where, you know, a customer will give you a nice review. Let's say they give you 5 stars. You could, you know, go, that's like great advertisement. It's like, I mean, look, first time home buyer, I helped out this first time home buyer. Look what they said. You know, so that kind of gives you like a little bit of an advantage as well.
Does that help with listings?
It does as well.
Meaning like getting a listing, not selling it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it works both ways, to be quite honest.
Getting listings is the most difficult part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I mean, first of all, you gotta, you know, comb through so many people, and then, you know, sometimes they'll interview multiple agents, and then there'll always be that agent that'll, you know, I'll come out there and I'll tell them, I mean, listen, you know, strategy, 700,000. Okay. And then somebody will come desperate, you know, because they're like, you know, oh my God, I need to make this sale. I'll get you 900. And then
They never do.
No.
Yeah.
It just sits there, and then it just becomes like, you know.
It's the ones you see that say, "Oh, dropped 50,000."
Right. So that looks terrible.
Price
right?
improvement. They're like, oh,
Price
whoa. Yeah. Did it improve really? I mean, maybe another 50 and then we're talking business, you know? But yeah, that's that whole game with that.
How did you get your first listing?
Yeah. Again, the first listing was kind of with the broker that I was with. We did a lot of like, you know, showings together with that. And, you know, he would give a lot of the presentation. I would do some of the presentation, you know, until you become comfortable, because, you know, again, you want to make sure you know what you're saying legally and whatever the case is. Right. So, you know, we would go out together, and once I became comfortable, you know, I started going on a few of my own. And then again, I would throw my own spin on things, and just being genuine with people as well. And like, you show them facts, right? Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. You know, here's the situation. You know, everybody loves their house, and everybody always thinks their house is $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, they take pride of ownership, right? Like me too. I'm like, oh, that's that house down the street. Like, screw them. I could get double. I was like, okay, but you know, you also got to appraise properly. You know what I mean? There's contingencies.
Well, it's like when you're selling, your house is the best. When you're buying, that house is garbage.
It's the worst. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my God.
You walk in and it's like, oh, they just renovated the kitchen. Kitchen's garbage.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to take that whole thing out.
Yeah,
But some
50,000
people
right
get
there.
sensitive, like, oh, you're just disrespecting my house. I don't want you as a buyer, right?
Right. No, listen,
Yeah.
again, if you come in with facts, right, and you show them, listen, this sold for 50,000, a little bit more, but look, renovated kitchen, right? And you explain to them, you have a great kitchen. Nobody's saying you don't. But again, this is what people are looking for. And also, I like to put people in the bodies of the other person, right?
Right.
So if you're a buyer, I put them into a seller mentality. You know, and if you're a seller, I'm going to tell you, look, make believe you're the buyer, and this is what you're buying. I'm like, how would you feel about that? So it kind of gives people like a little bit of like an aha moment. It works sometimes, but sometimes they'll still say, no, my house is way better. And we try it out. Listen,
So how do you have it usually? Do you have the people in the house who own the house when you're doing a showing? Or you try to get...
No. Yeah. So you usually try to book a showing. There's open houses, and then there's like private showings. We use like an app where you could like book a time.
That's for when you're representing buyers.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, even with sellers, again, it works the same way. There's an app that shows you who's going to be requesting to go there. So this way you could kind of keep tabs. You could follow up with people, get to see, what their thoughts are. And then it kind of works both ways with, the buyer and the seller with, those type of showings. At the end of the day, it's just really a numbers game where like the more people you see, the more listings you'll get.
Right.
Same thing with the buyers, right?
Well, how do you get these appointments? How do you know someone's selling their house and wants to sell?
I mean,
house?
Usually whenever I sell a house somewhere, you do like a little postcard campaign, just sold in your neighborhood.
Right.
So then people are like, oh, wow, this sold for that? I'm like, oh my God.
So you send those out?
Yeah, I send those out. You got to invest a little bit in your business. And then also just like through referrals, I just know so many people. I'm a people person. I just try to, know as many people as possible. And then, some people will be like, hey, listen, Mike's a hard worker. I see what he could do, and, I'll give him the listing. And then if that works out well for one person, they'll recommend another person, or their neighbor, whatever the case might be. So it's also a lot of word of mouth.
Right. And if you can answer this question, what are average commissions in your area?
So there's really no average commission.
Average, right?
Yeah. It's
I know like Compass would charge like 7%, 6% something really
Jesus
high, and then
Christ.
smaller. Right. As far as New York is concerned, or at least that used to be the case, right? Because you're paying for the brand and whatnot.
You know what? You go in there, you show your value.
Right.
And then sometimes you throw out a number, and then, you explain to them why, right? This isn't to get me rich. I need more money for marketing. This house might be harder to market.
Right.
I have to like put it out on Google, search engine optimization. You know what I mean? Put it on Facebook ads, put it here. I got to get a good photographer. I mean, photographers, God bless them. You know what I mean? They're amazing. But
the aerials, you have to pay for that.
Right. The drones, right.
Get the drone shots.
I'm not going to get my cousin with an iPhone, 12 and like, oh yeah, I'll take a few pics for you. So yeah, we hire like professionals that they're charging me money. So, and then people need to understand it's like, I don't work by the hour. Right. So it's like, we might be in this for 2 weeks. We might be in this for like 6 months. We might be in this for a year. So it's like, even if you're going to make whatever X amount of dollars over the course of the year, it's like, I made like $4 an hour, so it's really hard to like really gauge that. And especially with the commissions, again, everything's always negotiable. That's what we always say.
I know of someone who was a real estate agent, and basically they got this client that used to come from Manhattan, older gentleman, and he was looking for a house. He said he wanted to be closer to his kids.
Right.
And this person took him around for like 6 months showing all these different houses. I don't know how it came out, but basically it turned out that guy lives in assisted living in Manhattan. And he needed to be busy during the day. He needed to do something. So why not get this guy to drive me around, show me all these beautiful houses, and we talk, we spend time. Then he gets back on the ferry and goes back to the city. Do you have anything like that happening to you?
I mean, nothing like that, but like, very close where, some people just seemed like they were, really invested and going to be doing it. And then like, before you know it, they're like, yeah, you know what, I think I'm okay where I'm at. And it's like, oh my God, like it's been like 4 months. So now like I'm a little bit more of a seasoned agent, that was like when in my rookie year.
Just started.
Right. Now, after like a few showings, you kind of start asking questions like, so, you're telling me none of these houses you liked. You picked them. Okay.
Yeah.
And you liked none of them. I'm like, tell me what you don't like about them. You try to get to the deeper root because at the same time, you don't want to lose a customer. If it's, But listen, I have no problem firing people also. People could fire me. I could fire a client, and I've done it in the
If
past.
they sign, let's say, exclusivity, whatnot, you can still
you could fire them. Yeah, you could just let them know, listen, I don't think it's working out. Do you want to take a little bit of time off?
Yeah.
Or maybe there's somebody
same as relationships, right?
Exactly right. We were on a break. When I bought the house. I'm like, okay. Yeah. It was I went on like one listing appointment actually. The guy was like, he was not all day. The lights were on, but nobody's home, that type of situation. And like I've walked into the place, I mean, it was like clutter everywhere. I was like, oh my god. I mean, it was like more than clutter. Clutter is like
Hoarder.
Like, it was like hoarder plus, yeah. I mean, you know, he was taking me around the house. I see like dead flies. I'm like literally like yakking, and I'm like, oh my god, how am I gonna sit through this? And I'm like, this got to be a quick presentation because like I really can't be here.
Yeah.
Guy takes me to the basement. I'm still alive. And he's like, you know, showing me. I'm like, I see like black mold, and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And then like the kicker was like, he's like, and that's an extra shower where I take showers. I try not to take too many showers because like the water sometimes comes out green, and I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of here. But you know, somebody bought it.
Yeah.
Somebody still bought it.
I mean,
you
they
know?
probably took it apart. And
Right.
Did you list it?
I mean, it wasn't me. It was somebody in the brokerage because I was like, I mean, I can't. And then the guy was just like, he needed like a lot of like handhold. I mean, like over the top handholding. And I was like, you know, thank God I was very busy. So, you know, sometimes it's okay to say no
Right.
as well, you know,
Right.
for your own sanity.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, the guy was like calling me like all sorts of hours, like leaving me a message at 4 a.m. Listen, this is what I'm thinking. And I'm like, no, I can't do this. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if you're going to be normal, you know, or even a little crazy, it's fine.
Yeah.
But this is like, you know, psychotic. And I was like, nah, I'd rather not.
How did you end up joining Signature Realty?
I got fired from my old, you know, so
Like, why did you choose?
I really
that
didn't have a
brokerage?
choice. No. So, you know, lucky enough in my, you know, first year, 2 years, I met a lot of good agents and, you know, people who I shadowed, people who I was able to like know. And, you know, a few of the agents that, you know, a really top successful agent, he joined this brokerage and I was like, you know, wow, why did he go from like here to now here? And I'm like, all right, you know, and I reached out. He's like, I mean, you know, the grass is really green here, like really green, you know what I mean? Landscaping and everything. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let me give that a go. So I went and I'm like, I joined and I was kind of like on a team before.
Right.
Now I'm more independent. So
Okay.
I'm able to, you know, kind of like do whatever I want to do. And that was the thing
Can
also.
you explain that dynamic? I thought it's better to be on a team because, especially when you're newer,
When you're
right?
new, right.
And how does that split work, right?
Right. There's usually, I mean, again, it's always like, you know, they're the ones kind of in control, right? They're giving you leads,
Right.
or they're giving you, you know, free desk and this and that, whatever the case is. So of course you got to have some sort of a split. I mean, there's 50-50s, there's 60-40s. Everybody has it, you know, there's no like concrete one
So
type
it
of a
goes
split.
like you get the team members get a certain percentage
Right.
of the listing, right? Of
Right.
whatever that percentage you get, right? And the rest goes to the house and then it gets split up or the
Well, I mean,
whoever's team it is.
Let's say like you get a commission that's like to make math easy, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes math and me, you know, it's a little bit off. So let's say it's $10,000, right? And you're on a team, right? And it's a 60-40 split, right? Let's say, so 60 will go to me
Right.
and 40% will go to my broker.
Okay.
You know, and then
Your team lead or the broker?
the team lead.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually they cover all the other broker expenses and stuff like
Okay.
that. You know, or there's
Because the
caps.
house takes certain amount too, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, again, it all depends how you kind of work it in. But
Right.
like, let's say it's just something like that.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. When you're, you know, first starting out, I never really advise to kind of just go at your own route because like you could get really discouraged quick. I mean, there were really days. I mean, even recently, sometimes you know, you get a little bit discouraged and you're like, oh, you know, am I doing this? Is it going to take off? And then, you know, it's always good to have a team around you. Like, okay, this one's having success. I could do this exact same thing. But then again, just doing it for a few years, I decided, I'm like, you know what, you know, I'm good at it. You know, why leave money on the table when you could kind of just do your own thing? So that's kind of why I jumped to Signature.
I see. And then there are certain elements like that you saw, like, okay, this checks off my box. This is why I like them. Like, what do agents look for when they join brokerages? Or what are the main things?
So, I mean, you know, some brokerages, they follow certain standards where they're like, listen, I need you in the office every day making calls, you know, and I'm like, dude, it's not a corporate gig. You know what I mean? Like if I want to work from home, I'm going to do the exact same thing at home. Don't worry about it. You know, which is fine. I mean, some people prefer to go into an office. It keeps them motivated, right? It prevents you from like, you know, watching Netflix for 8 hours and like raiding the fridge and be like, all right, I'll make a few calls later. So it does give you some sort of structure. I'm not knocking that by any means. But like for myself, I'm a little bit of a social butterfly, and I'm like, you know what? I can't just be. I did the office thing in banking.
Okay.
You know, I did the office thing. I did the 9 to 5. I'm like, I can't just be confined to 4 walls. That's why, you know, for me, it's like kind of like my car is the office at this point.
Right. Anything else that the brokerage offer that you felt like, okay, this is a right fit?
I mean, just leadership. I mean, leadership is like, I mean, they are like one of the largest brokers in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, you know, if I'm going to join somebody, it's going to be, you know, somebody who's like really successful. Like they do a lot of like social media also. And that's something that I was like, all right, you know what, eventually that's what I want to get into. They're constantly training. You know, they have their whole academy and everything. So I was like, you know what, you know I have the support if I need it.
Right.
But at the same time, the flexibility to be independent and do what I want to do. So they gave me the best of both worlds. So that's why I kind of landed with them.
And I would assume it's a fairly collegiate environment where, like, if you say you can't make a showing, you could call someone and they're like,
Right.
hey, can you cover me? Right.
Yeah. I mean, also they have 400 agents, over
wow.
400
Oh, wow.
agents.
So,
Right.
okay.
So like you work with a smaller team or whatever the case is, you know, maybe 10 agents. Here we have 400 agents. Everybody's on a text chat, you know, they're on a group of like an app where, again, you're absolutely right. You can't make it. You know, you ask of a friend, you know, you throw them a few shekels for gas and everything. But at the same time, you know, sometimes, you know,
Is it just that, or you would give, like, if they close?
No. I mean, they really won't, you know what, they really won't, you know, they really won't do that, you know, because they understand you've been working with this client for a while, right? If they do that one showing and it happens to hit, they're really not going to ask that, you know, but, you know, you thank them for their time.
Right,
You give them
I
some
see,
sort of
I see, okay.
compensation. Yeah.
But in terms of different brokerage, right? Let's say you get the listing, the seller usually pays the broker fee, right? Is
Again,
that how it is in Jersey?
So again, it's really, you know, it's really like what they really want to do. You kind of explain to them, like, listen, you know, it's in your best interest to, you know, pay this amount to me, due to, you know, whatever percent. Right? I know it's in your best interest. Otherwise,
that comes out.
yeah. No, might come out, or Big Vito. You know what I mean? He'll be waiting for you in the parking lot. So I'm just saying. You know, 5% now. So, but you explain to them why, right? Marketing, this, that. You know, they have to understand. You know, I'm going to be conducting these open houses. I'm going to be working hard for you, and then, you know, this is what's usually paid, or whatever. You know, we could talk about it. And as long as
it also depends on the area that it
Right,
is in, right?
right.
Depending on how demanding it is.
Exactly. Right. For instance, exactly. If you know the house is going to sell like in a week, right? They might be like, you know, I'll get you this percent, smaller percent, or whatever the case is.
Versus when you have to go
And
bringing
really,
people
really,
constantly.
But it's
yes.
still the seller that pays the broker fee, right?
Not necessarily. Not all the
How would
times.
that work otherwise?
So again, you know, let's say, I mean, for the most part, the seller will pay the commission for,
Right, the
let's
commission,
say, the listing agent, right? Because you're working for them. That's your fiduciary.
Right.
They have the choice right now to maybe pay the buyer's agent or not pay them, right? I mean, some people, I've been on listings where they're like, well, you know, they're not paying a commission. And then, you know, you have to be like, all right, you know what? We'll try to negotiate a commission. You're still going to show the house, right? You're not going to you're going to do the right thing for the client.
Well, that's the split, right? When, like, let's say in New York, it's MLS, right?
Right.
The listing agent will put up the property, say the commission is 3%,
Right.
whatever, like, let's say, and then 1% would go to the buyer's
Right,
agent
right.
if you bring someone, right?
Right.
And that kind of is what's negotiated, decided.
Correct.
But it's still kind of the sellers takes it out of the
Right. For the most part, yeah. I mean,
Right.
but if not, you know, you could speak to the buyer and say, hey, listen, this might be a long-standing relationship. You know, we could put this into financing, you know what I mean? But, you know, this is what people usually pay. You know, if the seller decides not to pay, are you okay with paying that? You know, and again, you have to, you know, you can't just be like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just tell them like, I promise I'm just going to open up a few houses for you. And no, you have to let them know this is what I'm going to be doing for you. So just like an attorney, right? You know what I mean? You got to tell them like, listen, this is what I'm going to do for you. This and this and this. So I'm going to bill you for this time. You know, I'm not going to be driving people around like, you know, like 5 days a week, like you said, like that guy for like 6 months at a time. Right. So that's a little bit crazy. So yeah, it's all about how you present yourself and value, you know. For the most part, yes, sellers still like to take care of a lot of it because it gives them value too, as long as we explain it the right way, where you're telling them, listen, people are going to be wanting to see the house and the buyer's agent is going to, you know, do a lot of the legwork.
Right.
So it's in your best interest to pay them Because if not, some might just say, oh, that house isn't available anymore, and like, do their own thing. It's the wrong thing for the client.
When they pay them, it's not that they tack extra, right? If you guys negotiate
it's in
a
there.
certain percentage, you can
Correct.
say, hey, listen, if someone else brings in a client, I'm going to give them from this percentage.
A half or something like that. Right. Yeah.
So that's how it works.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But you will never take on a listing and the guy said, I'm not paying you anything.
Right.
Get it from the buyer. That doesn't happen.
No,
right?
that doesn't
Right.
happen.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. That doesn't happen.
Okay.
Because if somebody tells me that, I'm gonna be like, okay, for sale by owner you go, my friend.
Exactly.
Let me know how that works out for you,
Right.
Yeah, that's wild.
Do you approach those for sale by owner?
Yeah, a lot, I try to explain to them, I'm like, listen.
You've been on the market for the last like 90 days or whatever, right?
And
Without
I'm like,
a single bite.
Right. Where's your marketing? Like this small sign that you put out there, or like a community Facebook group, like, hey, anybody want to buy my house, please? So, kind of, you try to tell them, listen, if you want to be really taken seriously, go with a professional. Like, I don't go to WebMD and I'm like, oh, tracheotomies look pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, I go to a doctor. You know what I mean? So it's like same thing. I'm the doctor.
There's so many nuances that happen during the life of the transaction that if you don't want to be doing this yourself,
right.
Unless like you have expertise in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, making sure that the person has a pre-approval, the negotiation factor of everything. You also want to make sure that, like, listen, you're taking a good real estate attorney who knows how to get the whole transaction. Inspections, make sure the house appraises. I mean, there's so many things that could go crazy. And then if you're just representing yourself, I mean, that could be like a huge load.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how would this look? Let's say if I'm looking to purchase a house, I come to you, like what's the life cycle of that transaction? I know there's also like a 3-day review process because in New Jersey, the realtors are the ones who will draft the initial contract,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
And then
How was that, by the way?
So where I used to,
you have to like get familiar with it. Right?
yeah,
It's like-
yeah. And like, one of the not so great things where I was like before, they kind of had like a concierge service where they're like, we're going to do everything for you. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but then like when you're in the real world and you don't know how to even start a contract, that's when things get a little bit, iffy. So actually when I first started writing my own contracts, I would like have to like look at my old contracts and be like, all right, I'm just going to copy and paste. But then, you start to like read what you're actually doing and you're like, oh, okay, this is, easier than what it is. I mean, to create an offer, it takes me maybe like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, to like write up everything and, just kind of get everything going. But then, the next step is like, God willing, you get it accepted. You get that 3-day attorney review period. The attorney kind of looks at everything, make sure everything is kosher.
they usually change it all up, right?
Yeah. They're like, forget about what this guy said. Right. We're going to do this. We're going to put in that.
But if they miss the 3-day period, that's it. Then it's binding, right?
Right. It's binding.
So like there's a lot of pressure on attorneys in Jersey to get things done on time.
And exactly. I explained that to a lot of people. I'm like, listen, if you're going to, go with like the Nona Giuseppina of like attorneys, you might be in something binding within 4 days that you don't even know about.
Right.
So, there's definitely things they have to disapprove the contract and that kind of opens up the period a little bit. And then after that, it's kind of just like, a little bit of negotiation, everybody, meeting of the minds, you get, finish attorney review, you get to the next step. Next step is usually inspections.
Okay.
You got to inspect the house, whether you're inspecting for your own sake or to like do again, a few negotiations. You go, you inspect the house, you get a, professional inspector. Again, nobody really knows who an inspector is. So again, I give them,
and that's also provisions in the contract, like what is allowed, allows you to exit the contract if that fails the inspection.
As long as you don't waive it, right? Because a lot of people
waive it, especially during when it was hot, right?
Yes.
And the sellers expected you to waive inspection, right?
Right. And even new construction, I would say you got to keep at least something. I always tell them at least try to keep structural. You want to make sure the house isn't going to like break down. Environmental, you want to make sure there's no mold, termite damage, right? Like real serious damage. And I'm like, everything else is going to kind of be cosmetic. So like I tell them, nobody's going to repaint the house for you. Okay. So don't even like think of asking for that. So, we go through inspections. Again, I'll give them a few qualified inspectors. They do that. They get a good inspection report. Let's say everything looks good. We go for the appraisal, or if, let's say it's cash, we kind of start wrapping things up. And then God willing, people are in the house. It could be as quick as 30 days, maybe even sooner.
Right.
But
So I was going to ask how fast was a transaction that you did? Like from the start to the end?
So the fastest one I did was like 2 weeks, and it was cash. So that's always like,
Are sellers still looking for that? They prefer.
yeah. But I mean, like also you try to tell them like no, like not a lot of people have $800,000 that they want to. And even if you do, you still want to borrow from the bank. And there's also like tax implications, right? Like if you could like get a mortgage or whatever, it helps. I guess I'm no accountant, so I don't know.
Right.
This
Want to plug yours?
This is not any accounting advice over here, okay? Yeah. But at the same time, you're like, of course, cash, right? Because then you don't have to worry about an appraisal, right? And things get speed up also.
Right, of course.
And then the contract's like literally like one contract that you sign, like one page, and you're done. But then I've seen like things like come up with like the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I'm like, oh my God, we got to sit here for like 2 hours signing this. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, depends on the loan, as well.
Right.
What do you think when someone contacts you to buy a house? Like, what do you see people the biggest mistakes they make like right away?
Just kind of the pre-approval is a big thing also. You know what I mean? Like they'll say like, I want a $600,000 house. I'm like, okay, yeah, I want a Lamborghini, but you know what I mean? I got to make sure I got the money in the bank for it, right? So that's a big thing also, getting that pre-approval. Yeah. It's not just for me. I mean, it's for you, don't waste your time, and not only that, somebody could pre-approve you. I mean, I remember I was coming here, like whenever it was, the guy's like, oh, you could go up to $1 million. I'm like, yeah, but $1 million is a big payment. You know what I mean? What do you have for like 500? You know what I mean? So you also want to make sure that like you're comfortable with your payment. I give them that value. And then, we talk about things where it's like, again, if we're going to be on this together, I want you comfortable and I want you transparent with me. Let me know what you're looking for really, don't like just, hide things and then say like, no, well, I loved everything, but you know what? It was missing like that island in the kitchen. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning? I
would have built it for you.
Yeah, exactly. I know a guy, you know what I mean? Like Vinny, he could like quickly, but that's like some of the things.
Like, you mean to tell me you didn't buy this $2 million house because there was no island in the kitchen? Yeah. I would have brought that island from my house.
Exactly. I would have brought Staten Island for you. You know what I mean? Just get your goddamn island, So yeah, that's like some of the things that.
How do you deal with like people, I guess a lot of people, when they go to buy a house, they negotiate down right away.
Yeah.
Like I had that experience with me. I'm not a great negotiator, so my pop's with me. We walk into a house. It's like, what's the asking price? $650. I'll give you $300,000.
Right. Exactly. I'm like, oh my God. No, I've seen plenty of those, right? But again, you have to. It's always supporting facts, right? It's almost like law. You know what I mean? You have to like show like the facts. Like, so you tell them, all right, listen, you think this house is less than what it is. Let's see what houses sold around here for, and then we'll show them. I'll show them like, okay, well look, this house literally right next door. Same cookie cutter house.
Yeah.
Was listed for $500,000. It sold for $650,000. Now, why are you going backwards on $650,000 to $500,000? Right. How do you think that's going to work? And then the other thing is like, usually in New Jersey, right? They have like this best and final or like highest and best. They kind of give you like a deadline because at the same time, you don't want to have the house sit for too long, but you also want to make sure that like if you got a good offer, you're going to take it.
Can you explain best and final? Is that like a formal thing?
It's not really a formal thing. It's like this like make-believe world that we're like living in. But I mean, like, so like, okay, let's say you list the house on Friday.
Right.
People come through, you start getting like 5 different contracts.
Right.
And like you list the house to say 500,000 and somebody's like offering you, listen, I'm going to give you 570. You can't be greedy because number one, if that person decides to find another house, you just lost that buyer.
Right.
So you kind of have to start wrapping up like, all right, who am I going to take?
Mm-hmm.
So then, the realtors, they started getting a bunch of contracts in. And to be fair, they're like, all right, listen, we got to set a deadline, so that somebody, otherwise they could just keep bidding. And it's not like a car auction, you know what I mean? It's like a, it's a house. So they're like, all right, we're going to make a deadline Tuesday, 12 p.m. Send in your best contracts, terms and everything. And then you usually get those. And that kind of panics people. And then what I tell people, I'm like, well, listen, they just did best and final. That means they definitely got at least asking price. Because if somebody got under asking price, they'd be like, no, I'm going to wait until I get asking price or more. So then I'm like, kind of think about it.
So that email goes out to everyone who had put out like an offer.
Right. Hey guys, we're going to be, meeting with the buyers on Tuesday at 12 o'clock. So please send in your best foot forward, put in your best offers.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, you have to kind of just use logic, right? Why are they meeting so quick? They must have something in hand that they cannot lose out on. Right. So, that's kind of puts a little bit of pressure. And then it makes you kind of be like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to put in that under asking offer because it's just kind of a waste, But again, I mean, I've seen sometimes they go through as well, but those are like really a dime a dozen.
I wanted to come back to that island in the kitchen.
Sure.
Sometimes, like, I would assume buyers prioritize like the wrong things. You want to make sure the house doesn't have termites. You want to make sure it's not really about the island sometimes. Yeah. Or do you see more that people want to come into a furnished house or, somewhat finished and I don't want to do anything?
Yeah. I mean, a lot do, and a lot are okay with like moving in somewhere and like kind of like working on, things. And, I kind of explained to them, I'm like, I had like one buyer, he would come in and be like, well, why would they put the kitchen here? I'm like, they didn't build a house. All right. They just moved in. Yeah. I don't know.
They're kind of weird people. I don't know if I want to buy from them. Right?
Yeah. I mean, the guy was like, why is that like that? And I'm like, I don't know. The developer did it like that way. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I'm like, why is the Mona Lisa like the Mona Lisa or the Picasso's the Picasso? It just is. Right. So, but I tell them like, guys, you have to look at it from a different perspective, right? Do you like the community, right? Do you like the style of home? Is it big enough for you? Is it, enough room for you, right? Like you said, growing family, enough bedrooms for you, enough bathrooms for you, the community that you want, close to transportation, that's, I try to get like those other factors.
So you're setting their expectations.
Right. Because I tell them like, this is paint. You just paint it. I mean, sometimes we go in there and we see things. I'm like, oh my God, this house was not like this on Zillow. Again, the photographers, right? They're like magicians, I tell you. And I'm like,
take a picture.
I mean, a lot of them do use the wide angle.
Yes.
You come in. I went to a few houses, before I purchased mine, and you see these big rooms. And you're like, wow. You drive over there, and it's like a 2-bedroom, tiny little, like a
just
cottage.
You and the realtor
house.
are in there, and you're like, wait, where's the bed? That I saw online.
I saw a house like that.
Yeah.
The bed would not fit into the room. I'm like, this is not a room. This is a closet. He goes, no, this is the 3rd bedroom.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, I guess, but yeah, so they do crazy things with like editing and stuff like that. So that's why I always tell them like, listen, we got to go see it in person. We can't just do like offsite offers. But yeah, I mean, listen, that's the whole name of the game is like, you go, you see the house, you fall in love with it, and you fall in love with not what's inside already. You could move furniture around. Sometimes the best homes are sometimes vacant. Because people I could envision this here, envision this there, but sometimes it's like fully cluttered. And I always advise people whenever they're selling, you gotta declutter as much as possible. You gotta keep it clean. You gotta make it a pleasant thing. I went into like, a home the other day with my buyers, and it's like the sellers were still there. And it's like, I don't know what they were cooking. I mean, it might've been a person, but it was like, and I'm like, my buyers just looked at me and he's like, okay, I'm good. And I'm like, we didn't even see. I'm like, we just stepped in. You know what I mean?
I had a very similar experience. I went before I purchased my house. We went somewhere in Jersey, and I'm not gonna make any neighborhood sound bad or whatever. Sure. But we went in Jersey. Beautiful house, honestly. And I think that, I mean, note to the sellers. Maybe it's not a good thing to be in the house when you're trying to sell a house.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because the sellers were there. And the real estate agent, she was showing me around, and the son's like, oh, by the way, you didn't tell him we have all brand new windows in the backyard. And it was huge windows looking into the backyard.
Right.
And my father was with me, and he's like, why do you have all brand new windows? She's like, oh, the old ones got shut up a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'm like, thanks.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
we're
good.
gonna pass. We're gonna pass.
I guess it worked in my favor, but that person being there saying that just cost her a deal.
Absolutely.
Because the house was beautiful.
Yeah.
And actually the area wasn't that bad, but the fact that you just told me that your old windows got shut up.
Yeah. I mean, no, even plenty of, like, sometimes I've gone on these showings, it's always common to ask, like, have you had any flooding or anything like that? Like, no. Everything was fine. I'm like, I mean, Sandy.
Don't mind the black mold on the walls.
Right. Like Sandy was like, oh, I was on my roof for like 3 days, but, and I'm like, okay, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep
But there are
moving.
disclosures in the contract, right? That they could
Right.
be held to,
Yes.
right? If they misrepresent.
Well, you know what? Every house right now has to go on with a seller's disclosure on there, but again, it's like to the best of your ability,
Right.
and like people like it's crazy. It's like amnesia. You know what I mean? When they start filling it out, they're like, "Oh, when was this roof? I don't know." You know what I mean? And you could mark it unknown. So it's like
So no more $500, and that's no longer the case.
I mean,
I
again,
think in New York, right before it used to be that if you give a $500 discount on the price,
No disclosures.
you don't have to do the disclosure.
now it's fully mandatory.
Right.
Every home.
You guys went into a whole thing. I mentioned that story in regards to that.
And I took it somewhere else. I had another thing off of that.
You're right. This guy
Mention
is
that
so
story that-
serious. Jesus Christ.
Look,
This is like the
as a buyer, you should do your own research first of all,
Yes.
right? And you can ask the real estate agent, and they can provide the information. But what I'm trying to say is that the seller, like, look, if I would have Googled it and said, "Oh, there was some crime in the area," there's crime in every area.
Sure. Right.
But you telling me that the windows were shut up and that's why
Right.
you have all brand new windows, even if it was a one-time thing, you caused me something that I didn't want to. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like
Absolutely.
maybe I shouldn't have heard that.
Right.
And
Right.
it's not to say that that this is a bad area or a good area. It's not
Right.
about that. You just turned me off.
Absolutely. And they're thinking they're just doing a nice thing, like telling you, you know what I mean? Like,
information.
So matter of fact, right? But it's like
I heard other stories when like the sellers are there and like somebody comes in and it's like, "Oh, this has to go," and the seller comes in and is like, "No, this floor, I paid super crazy money,"
Right.
and then they start getting into an argument. It's
Right.
like, guys.
Yeah.
Just go, just
Absolutely.
let the house sell itself.
I mean, yeah, absolutely, exactly. You kind of want that privacy. It's an intimate moment, right? Because this might be your future home. You kind of want
you want
to
to connect with it.
right. You don't want to have like any outside like noise, right? So of course, yeah, I always suggest please get out of the house for a little bit. Go walk the dog. It'll be 15 minutes. Same thing with like an open house. You know what I mean? Just like, just leave for a little bit, like go to Target, and we'll finish everything up and we'll provide you the feedback that you need anyway.
Right.
you also don't know who's buying the house and for what. I actually found one house.
For target practice,
No,
maybe.
no, no. What I'm so let me explain. I found a very beautiful house in Homedale.
Right.
Super expensive area.
Yeah. Gorgeous. though.
Crazy taxes.
Yep.
The house was like a 3,500 square feet house
Jeez.
for $400,000.
Red flag.
Of course.
Right.
I saw it in the pictures. There was bullet holes in the window,
Oh, okay.
in the mirror. Somebody
Yeah.
got shot in that place and there was a blood stain on the thing. So I
right.
show my wife. I'm like, "Look at this home." She goes, "I'm not living there. Are you crazy? They have it in the pictures that there's literally that looks like somebody died right there." I'm
Right.
like, "Yeah, but I could flip it."
Yeah. Well,
So like, no, what I'm trying to say is that what I'm trying to say is that I would buy that house.
Sure.
Somebody actually did and probably sold it. I didn't follow
Absolutely.
that house. But the
Absolutely.
point is, I could have fixed it up. I could have. So you never know what the reason is for them buying it.
Sure.
So you coming in and telling me that your windows got shut up is like sometimes just
Right.
better just send you to the movies or something.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? That type of a story that you mentioned. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know what I mean? Like in Homedale.
There's a house close to me that somebody
Homedale
stabbed
for
his
like
wife. It's
400,000.
right there. She
Right.
got stabbed right there.
Right. It's like $400,000 in Homedale. I'm like, what murders and crimes
Exactly.
occurred over here? Or it's like, or the house is like about to like fall off the ledge, and
That
you're like, all
house
right.
went quick. It was a big, beautiful house, but something happened there, obviously. You
Right.
know?
I mean, listen, people are going to have money, and some people are going to say, hey, I'll just invest it in the home. And then number one, it's going to grow value
I'm sure somebody put in 200,000 and sold it for $1.4 million.
easily.
Like that.
Easily, bro. Absolutely.
Interesting
And it
story.
wasn't me.
It wasn't you who bought it.
Because my wife was like, "I'm not going to live there."
She's just superstitious.
No, I didn't have the money.
That's a different story. That's a different story.
It's actually like a really nice house right on the cliff in Cape Cod that was being sold, I think, last year for like pennies, for like $300,000, right? And all those houses are like multi-million.
Was that from the Amityville horror or whatever thing?
No, the reason being is that cliff was being eroded, and you don't know how long that house is still going to be on that cliff.
I read that story.
That's
yeah, absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
And like you start thinking, I was like, would you buy it?
And I think
You're
it fell
technically buying a
over.
timeshare. It's not even. It's not
Yeah,
even a house.
exactly. Exactly.
As long as you don't end up
Literally
in
a
the house
timeshare,
when it falls.
And I heard it did fall over.
Did it
I think
really?
I know.
Yeah.
I got to look it up, but yeah, absolutely. What are you going to do for $4,000 on a home?
What's your advice to someone looking for a real estate agent? What should they be looking for? What's a red flag on the other side?
Right. I mean, number one, you want to look for somebody who's genuine, right? Who actually cares. Even if you're a brand new agent, right? They got to start somewhere. you know, they're not going to have a lot of sales underneath their belt. But if they're genuine and they're going to invest time in you, that's the number one thing you want to do. You know, we have so many like successful realtors, but at the same time, it's like, you know, they'll take you on as a client and they'll be like, all right, by the way, here's my assistant.
Right.
You know, they'll push you right off.
The lawyers do that often.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Here's my paralegal, you know? So, you know, a lot of times they'll do that. And it's like, I'm like, oh, I thought I was going to be working with you. It's like, yeah, no. I'll show you. I'll negotiate for you. I'll show you a house like maybe once a month.
The little Timmy over here, he's going to take you around.
He's going to take you around. Go right ahead, Timmy. You know, so number one, you want to say, am I working with you or am I working with a team? Right. Because, you know, I want you to find me a house. And then it's like, you know, other things like, you know, you kind of want to know like their knowledge. You know, again, years in the business doesn't make a difference, right? You just want to like feel them out. You want to have a good conversation with them. But if you feel like they're like a little bit like, you know, apprehensive or like shy, then I mean, is that really the realtor that you want kind of, you know, because negotiations could get tough. Right. So it's like, do you really want that type of person? Because I mean, they might be good. They might have their own style.
Right.
But at the same time, like as they're interviewing you to take you on as a client, you should interview them. So that's like one thing. You want to make sure they're genuine, right? You know,
avoid those. Oh, just trust me.
Right.
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, trust me. I know. Yeah, trust me. I know what I do.
I had that.
You know
experience.
how many? You know, I love when they tell me, like, you know how many houses I've sold, and it's like, again, it could be a team, right? So like, you know, oh, check my Zillow. I sold 400 houses. I'm like, you sold 400 houses last year? I'm like, how's that even possible? There wasn't even that many listings out there.
That's like,
you know,
1.5 per day, right?
Right, exactly. I'm
So
like,
it's the team that sold, and
right, and then they take credit.
They take credit.
Right, and then they'll be like, oh, look at me, super. I'm like, oh, okay, you know. So, you know, you again, do you have time for me? That's another thing also, right? I always ask, you know, when do you want to see homes? You know, this and that, you know, Saturdays, Wednesday, you know, 12 p.m., you know, Thursdays at 5. You know, if that's not going to work for me because, you know, I have other obligations or whatever the case is, I'll let them know that's going to be a little bit rough for me. You know, maybe we do this time. Let's see what we could work out. Again, you want to make sure that they're going to be there for you, right? And not just passing the buck to the next person. Because again, this is somebody that you want to have a connection with. You want them representing you, right? And they're trying to choose you, but you're like, you know, kind of like, again, just like, all right, no, yeah, don't worry. You get me. But, you know, you also get him.
right.
And they put it as a team, but which is fine. It's fine. But at the same time, a realtor should really be there for you at all times.
And the Zillow aspect of it, I guess, is very important now. Everyone tries to build up their profile and connect the sales. Is that
right? Which is, I mean, again, you know what I mean? Like, that's great, but also you should take it like a grain of salt because, like, you know, be like, Grandma, please write me a review. You know, right. It's one aspect, right? I mean, it's just to advertise yourself. You know, like I'm always, you know, on my headline is Best of Zillow, right? I always get that award because I deal with like a lot of Zillow clients. And, you know, they rate me on like how professional I was, how, you know, the, you know, other metrics, stuff like that. So I always get Best of Zillow.
Do they know about Nona?
Of course, baby. You know?
separate rating?
That's a separate story, right? But, you know.
Do they verify?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No. Do they provide you with leads? Like Realty and stuff? Because I remember the process when I was looking for a house and I looked at some house that I really liked. And, you know, they have that little message me. I'm like, hey, I'm interested. Here's my number. I got like 10 texts.
Right
I'm like,
away.
whoa.
Yeah.
Like,
so
and everybody's like, I'm going to show it to you. No, I'm going to show it to you. And I'm
Right.
like, wait, forget it.
Right. Absolutely. So a lot of people are on the same platform. Zillow, Realtor, there's a bunch of others. And, you know, they pay for leads. And, you know, let's say you only paid this amount or whatever the case is. They're going to tell you, all right, we'll give you leads, but we're also going to give, you know, a few others the same lead.
Yeah.
So you got to pick up quick, you know, or you got to get to the client quick. You know, you always try to answer a phone call very quickly, try to connect with the client right away, you know, ask the important questions. And it's almost like an elevator pitch. You gotta be quick.
You have like a process that you hear working in IT.
Right.
I work with several clients, but you can categorize them. And, you know, when somebody calls you and you speak with them for 3 minutes, you automatically know this is this type of person.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. Absolutely.
Like, I have like my mom client. They're like, I don't know what I did. I don't know. I'm clicking on this thing and I'm like, just stop.
Right.
Like, hold on, don't click. Wait, I already clicked on it. Hold on, it's downloading. Hold on, they're calling me.
Yeah.
I'm like, stop.
Yeah, just stop touching buttons. Stop
So
touching.
there's that person. You know?
Right.
Then there's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I reached out. You know, like I don't mean to take up your time. I'm like, this is what we do.
Right.
And then there's the other customer that's like, fix it now. I'm like, can I connect to? No, fix it. Just fix it. Click.
Right,
you know?
right. Absolutely. Yeah, we have plenty of those. I mean, I'll have people calling me and they're like, is the bathroom really that purple? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's purple. You want to go see the house? He's like, no, it's just, I literally had
really like
somebody said,
bathrooms.
can you do me a favor? Can you contact them and ask them what shade of purple it is? And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, what am I, interior design over here? I'm like, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll do that to you. You know what I mean? See you later. You know, so you're right. You get to kind of, you meet a bunch of characters over the phone also.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And it's like, you know, but some people you see they're genuine, they're looking, you know, and you want to ask the why. You always
want to
ask the
help
why.
because
Right.
when they're genuine, they're looking and you see that they're serious, you want to help them.
Yeah.
I would feel like probably like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see so many families that are like, you know, they've been renting and like they finally saved up enough money and they want the house for their kids. And I'm like, oh God, I really want you to have this house. You know what I mean? It kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, because I'm like, I understand. Like the kids want to, you know, a pool. The kids want that. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm like, I'm going to do everything I can to help you because I understand you're real and I really want to help you, you know?
Right.
And a lot of my clients, we become close friends. You know, they invite me to their pool parties. You know, it's good not to have a pool, but to have friends that have pools. I always say, you know what I mean? You don't have to clean up afterwards. So, you know what I mean? You know, I have a lot of people who we just remain kind of friends. We send each other cards, you know, in the mail, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Do you do rentals?
I do at times. You know, I try not to. I did the rental game back in Manhattan. I used to work a little bit in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And
You licensed in New York too?
I was.
Okay.
I kind of let that go. I'm
Okay.
like, all right, enough. Enough with the miles on the tires, you know? So, but, you know, I do rentals over here, but, you know, rentals are a little bit of a different ball game. So that I try to at least have it kind of a close by over here, you know, just because I know the area is a little bit better.
Are there a lot of renters in Jersey?
There are. I mean, you know, some people, they're okay with the monthly payments, but maybe they don't have enough money for like a down payment.
Or they don't want to own it.
Right. Or their credit might not be
Yeah.
where it has to be at that moment. So yeah,
I just always saw Jersey's like, you know, it's like a suburb, houses, not so. I mean, I know there's cities. I know there's Hoboken,
Right.
that I'm sure
Yeah.
mostly rented or whatever,
yes,
right?
yeah, Jersey City, all that.
Jersey City, yeah. But I would always imagine like when you go deeper into the suburb, most people wouldn't probably own and not that many renters of houses, not apartments, but like houses. Do people really like rent a whole house?
Yeah, they'll rent.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I like listen to your point where, for instance, let's say, you know, maybe your last kid is about to finish college, right? And like you sold somewhere, like, why am I going to buy a new house? I don't know what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know if I like Jersey. You know, last thing I want to do is go to Jersey. I hate it there, and then have to move back to like wherever I came from.
Right. Do you want to try it out? Do you want to take it for a test run?
They take it for
Yeah.
a test run, and then when they're like, "All right, listen, I like this place. You know, I rented for a year. I'm ready to buy."
Right. And what is usually a 1 month commission? Is that what
Again,
Jersey's-
yeah. I mean,
typically.
again, 1 month, sometimes half a month.
Yeah, depends what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Geez, you really want to know how much I make, huh?
No, I just want to know the
He's like-
structure.
He
No,
went
this-
around and then he did the weed.
Yeah, yeah.
And he
Listen,
came
it's
back
like, so
to
how much
I
you
know
make?
how it works in New York. I want to know how it works in Jersey because everything's different. I know, like in Nashville, from what I hear, like Tennessee, you get like only.
Why would you hear what happens in that?
I have people in different area codes. Okay, maybe I want to move.
I heard this guy over there.
heard this guy in Indiana.
Right.
Wyoming's your hot. A lot of land over there. You know what I mean? Soon enough, maybe Canada. I'll be selling over there the 51st state. Greenland. I don't know. You know, got to keep expanding. You know.
That's a good idea.
Let's go to the sellers. What are the sellers like? What are the mistakes sellers make? Biggest mistakes.
Again, like we spoke about, like, you know, overpricing, you know, thinking their house is like the best house on the block. And it might be, but again, things have to, you know, you have to explain to them. It's got to flow. You know what I mean? You can't.
Without offending them because
Right.
this is your baby. It's like,
Right. So, yeah, I mean, you tell them like, listen, the highest thing sold here for like $1 million.
You bring comps, right? to
Right,
show them.
exactly.
Yeah.
You bring comps. You have to show them value, right? The highest thing that sold here was for $1 million. We can't price it for 1.5 because if somebody decides to get a mortgage, they're going to get an appraisal, right? They're going to come in with that appraisal, and the appraiser's the bad guy, you know? They come in and they're like, yeah, we're not going to be able to do 1.5. The bank's going to give you 1.2, you know? And then you got to have that hard conversation. Like, I kind of told you, you know what I mean? So you got to temper expectations.
There were times in the market when the market was so high that I came across this when the house was, because it was so in such an area that was so favorable to people.
Sure.
I came in, they're like 400,000 for this house. I'm like, I love it. I want this house. It was close to my parents. I'm like, I want to live here. He's like, okay, what's your down payment? I'm like, 10%. He's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? You know, I'm like, I want the house. He's like, no.
Right.
So what happened was because it was overpriced, because the bank would only give me
Absolutely.
like a certain amount, like 3 something.
Right.
It would never appraise for 400,
Right.
but because the area is so hot, people will give 400 or even more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people were overpaying houses left and right, you know, during like the
You
COVID
still see
times. You know, here and there.
Depending on the area.
Yeah, depending on the area, you know. And again, you do want your contract to stand out, but also like, you know, when I'm supplying buyers like information, I'm like, hey, listen, the highest thing sold over here was this amount. Like, we can't get too crazy, you know. The house value might have went up, but like we can't just like give an exorbitant amount and then, you know, there's going to be repercussions, you know. So again, you want to make sure you're telling them that, and you tell the same thing to the seller, because you're like, the last thing you want to do is, it's a long process until you get that appraisal.
Right.
Right. It could be like 3 weeks. It could be a month. It could be a month and a half. And then you're in bed with this guy, right? I mean, you know, not technically, right? But, you know, you're in bed with this buyer seller, right? And then you guys are going along, and then it doesn't appraise. And let's say you guys can't meet in the middle. You're going to have to restart everything all over again.
Well, because there's a mortgage contingency, right? And if it doesn't appraise, it's part of the contract. And they could exit the contract, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Or renegotiated, but let's say you still are hard-headed and like, no, this guy didn't know what he was doing. I know I could get more. Again, you're going to have to restart again. That's usually a bad sign also, because like, let's say if something comes back on the market, nobody ever believes that the buyer couldn't get the mortgage. So it's like, all right, what did they find out? Is the house about to fall over? You know what I mean? Like, you know, are there ghosts there?
What do you mean they don't believe?
So like, for instance, let's say you're in contract, right?
Yeah.
You're like almost going, and then something happens, like the buyer can't get the mortgage at the end, right? Because the appraisal process is almost at the end. Then they have to do, you know, I'm not a loan officer, but they do a few
They
other.
do a very deep dive.
Right. They do a very deep dive. But then at the end of the day, let's say they're like, oh my God, we can't approve. I had something like that. I was supposed to close like a week. And then out of nowhere, this mortgage person calls me and they're like this, yeah, the loan's not going to go. I'm like, wait, you gave him the pre-approval. I'm like, this was the amount. And they're like, yeah, we didn't really check. We kind of just like gave him what he wanted. And I'm like, oh my God. And that's why it's, again, important to work with people that you kind of know.
Yeah.
Because you could be like, you know, do they really have this money? Because I mean, this guy was like, I mean, he was heartbroken also. They're like, yeah, they're not giving me the money. And I'm like, oh my God, like literally 7 days before closing. And because we had that contingency, he had the right to cancel the contract.
Time is wasted. And also the seller is also frustrated.
Right. You know,
What's that like?
I mean,
You have to deliver those news?
yeah, I've had to deliver that type of news also before. And then, you know, it's not a easy conversation. I mean, obviously you kind of want to, you know, do it the right way. And well, listen, that's why it's also important, right? Whenever you're selling a house and you want to tell them, hey, we're going to market it at a good price point, because we want multiple offers.
Right.
Because God forbid something like that does happen, God willing, you have like another 2 or 3 backups that you could go to, and you'll be like, hey, are you still interested? Yes. All right. This is what happened. Is your buyer ready to go? And you could kind of pick up where they left off. So it's also important to, you know, not just take that first contract, you know.
You said that, and I just had like a Seinfeld episode moment. It's like, they're not going to give him the money. To the seller, to the buyer. The buyer, we're not going to get the money. To the sellers, the seller, they're not giving them the money.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm like, hey,
I have no
There is
idea
no
you
money.
watch Seinfeld.
I watched everything, bro.
That's amazing. I like your take.
Seen you selling some big ass houses.
yes.
You get lost in the house, man?
I sell them all. I
know,
would
big and
say,
small.
big and small. I sell them all, you know.
But the big ones.
The big ones are nice.
What is
They're
that
nice.
tour like?
It's long. You know what I mean? That's usually when I get my 10,000 steps in plus, you know, I'm like going up these stairs and I'm like, oh my God, this better be it, you know? Cause yeah, I mean, they're big houses, you know, some like 5,000 square feet, 6,000. You got to go through every room. You got to go through every closet, right? Because I mean, you know, these are affluent people. They want to make sure they see everything and they're good with everything. So
The island has to be in the kitchen.
The island has to be in the kitchen, right? Not in the bathroom. I mean, some of them have in a bathroom. They're big enough. But,
In the closet.
In a closet, absolutely.
Some
yeah.
closet islands.
Dude, some closets that I see. Oh my God. I'm like, this is my bedroom. Like, and you guys have a closet in here. You know?
I seen, we know someone who has a pretty big house.
Yes.
We stayed over and my daughter wasn't feeling well. She was in the room, one of the kids' rooms upstairs. We were partying in the, if you could call it a basement. It's not a basement. It's
It's
first
like
floor.
right.
Okay. So I would run up during the whole time and check up on her, you know, And the next day I was sore. I'm like, holy shit.
Right,
Oh my God.
exactly.
My legs
Exactly.
are sore from running all over.
Exactly. I mean,
Can we get a Segway?
they're good to show, but at the same time, it takes a lot out of you. And then also they're long, right? You want to make sure that, you're not going to just rush through it.
Yeah.
So it's like, those are
You
sometimes.
definitely want to have them see the room because it's like
Right.
you're on the other side of the house. Like, can we go and back see that room in the other side of the house?
Right. And you're like, okay, let's just.
I'll
better
meet
buy
you
this
there.
house. Yeah, I'll meet you there. You start. All right. I'm like winded here.
What type of questions do you usually get on the walkthroughs?
Died over here.
No, I mean they ask like appliances, how old are things, mechanicals. They want to make sure a roof is like in good condition. Can you get that information?
People really ask about like appliances.
Yeah. I mean are they working?
Well, I mean that I understand, but like, I just feel like everything breaks so fast these days.
They do.
Like I bought a brand new refrigerator. All right, 2-year warranty.
Sure.
On 2 year and 1 month, the ice maker broke.
Of course, they plan
like
it out. It's like they know it. They factor that in. They're
Now,
like,
I bought that fridge just for the ice maker.
right. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's like that. And I mean, some people ask questions like, why are those sellers leaving? I'm like, bro, who cares? I'm like, they're out of here. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, does that really matter? You know what I mean? I'm like, well,
Because of the ghost in the basement.
right, exactly. I'm like, they're trying to get away from the FBI, bro. You know what I mean?
I saw your recent posting with the air conditioner. Like, brand new.
Yeah, it's like a brand new, you know what I mean? Because it's like, some things are over there. They're like, does that still work? And it's like, you turn it on and it works. And it's like some of the older things are like way more, efficient than what we have right now. Like you said, 2-year warranty, and it's like 2 year and one day.
You gotta get that extended warranty.
Yeah, always.
I'm sorry, you asked about the what do usually people ask besides appliances?
Yeah, like, why are they moving? Appliances, how old the other mechanicals are, zoning. I get zoning questions all the time. Like, can I have chickens here? And I'm like,
Oh, we had someone who wanted chickens on their property.
right. Yeah. Like, can I do this? Can I build an extension? They ask like all sorts, like some,
So
can
there's
I knock down this wall? I'm like, bro, it's your house. Like,
As
take
long
the
as you
roof
get a
off.
permit, do
Take
whatever
the
you
roof
want,
off, my
right?
friend. Yeah.
That's another thing in Jersey, right? You need a permit for like everything.
Yeah. Like breathing. You know what I mean? You breathe funny. It's like,
No, but like if you're doing a house renovation,
Yeah.
it's a lot more of permits than I think than it is in New York.
Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, I actually had a crazy situation. To your point, I mean, I was selling his, it was like an eclectic house, and the guy did like so much work. It was like he had like a spa in like his bedroom. It was like crazy, but no permits. I mean, this was like back like 40 years when like what permits? What are you talking about? But we had to get all new permits for everything. I mean, thank God the buyers were like, all right, listen, we really love this home. We'll wait for you to do all this stuff. But I mean, dealing with townships, it's
It takes forever,
bro. Yeah,
Is there
So
any way
wait.
it's expedited?
like cry in front of them, maybe.
That's it? There's
That's
no, like,
about it.
expedited that's gonna go
Like,
in
please,
and help
my daughter's gonna starve this week. All right, if I don't get this.
So, these could take for that closing probably
Yeah.
took forever.
It did. It took like months. It took months.
So they couldn't close until the permits were closed.
Right.
Right.
And then they parade a whole bunch of inspectors. They're like check it, like the small. It was like, oh, this handrail's a little. I'm like over there like screwing it back in. I'm like, check again. You're not leaving, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like check again.
Are you there for the inspectors?
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Right.
For the
Because
seller.
because you want to make sure that like, everything's going to go smooth, and then if it's not, at least you're like ready. What's going to be the next step?
Right. Do you have any words for aspiring agents who want to enter this industry?
Yeah, I tell them don't do it. I'm like, no. I tell them, listen, number one, learn about the industry. Again, it's not $1 million listing. Okay. Maybe, shadow somebody first, right? Look on YouTube even, like, what is this all about? And then see if like you have the stomach for it. You know what I mean? Not physically, some do, but at the same time, like, you really want to make sure that like, there's going to be a lot of wins, but there's also going to be a lot of losses. So, and you have also, again, if you have a family to feed, your next sale might not be for like 6 months, right? So it's like, how comfortable are you? So figure that out first. And then, take a deep dive. I mean, listen, if you're young enough, you're living with your parents you want to give it a crack, fine. But again, just, make sure you know what you're kind of getting into.
How much of it is something like $1 Million thing? Do you feel like inspired by watching it? Does it like
No.
draw your interest? Do you
I don't watch any.
Selling Sunset or any of those?
So I used to just watch it because like for the comic value, you know, because some of them are like,
Oh, you weren't like, I'm going to be like that guy.
yeah, no way, guys.
Like that girl.
Yeah, like that girl. I could definitely transition to that, you know? No, I mean, for the most part, you know, people are like, you know, they should understand this is fantasy life. Just like old reality TV, you know what I mean? Like these housewives, you know, they're not like really that crazy. I mean, they might be, but they're not that crazy all the time. And you're not going to be that type of a housewife also, you know? But at the same time, like, you know, people should take that with like a grain of salt because trust me, there's like, I mean, just too much times shit hits the fan. And it's not what you see on TV.
Right.
You know, like you said, they cut it out. They make it look nice. They polish it up. They'll give you like some losses. Oh no, poor Frederick. He lost out on $10 billion sale. Wah, you know what I mean? Right. It's okay. Next week I make a $50 million, you know? And it's like, how, you know? So never really look at, you know, what you kind of see on TV. If you really want to see what goes on, go to a brokerage. Say, hey, listen, you know, I'm interested in becoming a realtor. Can I hang out with you guys? Can I see what you guys do? You know, and that's actually best advice I could give.
Mike.
Yes. Mark.
So not everybody knows, but we know each other for a long time.
We do.
I haven't seen you in like a decade and a half.
It's probably been that way.
I had to start a podcast.
Well, you didn't want to buy a house, right? You know what I mean? Like,
I didn't want to buy a house in Jersey yet, right? But I'm coming soon.
Okay. I like that.
And so it was great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Same thing with you guys.
If anybody needs to reach you, where can they reach you?
Sure. I mean, you know, you could reach out to these guys right here, or you could always give me a call, 347-234-2863. Email me, michaelb@srnjteam.com. And again, listen, you know, I'll be doing as many things as possible are out on social media as well. You could follow me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm getting to the TikTok, but yeah, listen, that's where you could get me.
Was that like an Australian?
Right. You can get
He has many characters.
Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, obviously we're going to link everything down below.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share. See you in the next one.